I was admiring my newly installed privacy fence when I heard the unmistakable sound of disapproval. A throat being cleared with the specific frequency that signals an imminent complaint. I turned to find Karen Winters standing at the edge of my property, arms crossed, with an expression like she'd just discovered I was running a meth lab in my garden shed. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, her voice carrying that unique blend of forced politeness and barely contained outrage. "What exactly do you call this color?" I looked back at my fence, a tasteful slate blue that had taken me 3 weekends of back-breaking labor to build and paint. "Blue," I replied. "Specifically Newport blue, according to the label." Karen's eye twitched slightly. She was in her early 50s, with a perfectly styled blonde bob that somehow never moved, even in the breeze. She clutched a leather-bound notebook to her chest like it contained nuclear launch codes instead of neighborhood gossip. "I'm afraid blue is not an approved exterior color for Oakwood Street," she said, flipping open her notebook to a color-coded page. "The approved colors are sandstone, desert tan, forest green, muted sage, warm mocha." "Mrs. Winters, with all due respect," I interrupted, "there is no HOA in this neighborhood. I'd done my research before buying this place 6 months ago after my divorce. No HOA was literally at the top of my must-have list, right above home office space, and doesn't remind me of Susan." Karen's smile tightened. "There may not be an official HOA, but we have community standards that have been respected for 30 years. Your blue fence is an eyesore and is going to bring down property values. I checked the county codes before installing it. There's nothing prohibiting colored fences in this neighborhood." "We'll see about that. I'm starting a petition. The other homeowners won't stand for this kind of visual disruption." She turned on her heel. Literally, she was wearing actual heels to walk around the neighborhood, and marched back toward her immaculate colonial home 2 doors down. "Have a nice day," I called after her with deliberate cheerfulness, which only made her back stiffen further. Once she was out of earshot, I muttered, "Guess the fence isn't the only thing that's blue around here." That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer, staring at my apparently offensive fence. I'd built it myself after the divorce as a project to keep my hands and mind busy during those first few months of living alone. Susan had gotten the house in the suburbs with the perfect kitchen she'd designed. I'd gotten the 401k, the car, and the freedom to move wherever I wanted. I'd chosen this older neighborhood in Millfield specifically because it had no HOA, but was still well maintained. A place where I could have some peace and freedom without living next to junked cars on cinder blocks. As I contemplated whether this fence battle was worth fighting, my eyes fell on a box of electronics I'd been meaning to sort through. Poking out from the top was an old programmable LED light strip from my previous home automation hobby, something I hadn't had time for recently between the divorce, the move, and my increasingly demanding job as a software engineer. A slow smile spread across my face as an idea formed. I set down my beer and pulled out the light strip, examining it in the fading daylight. If she hates blue, wait until she sees what this fence can really do. The next morning, I found an official-looking letter in my mailbox. At first glance, I thought it might be from the city, but upon closer inspection, the letterhead read, Oakwood Street Neighborhood Preservation Committee, in a font that was trying way too hard to look important. The letter informed me that my fence color was in violation of the historically established aesthetic standards of Oakwood Street, and demanded I repaint it one of 8 historically appropriate colors within 14 days or face community consequences. It was signed by Karen Winters, Chair, Margaret Olson, and Herbert Jenkins. I did a quick Google search and confirmed what I already suspected. This committee had no legal authority whatsoever. I was still chuckling over the letter when my doorbell rang. My next-door neighbor, Dave Mitchell, stood on my porch holding a six-pack of craft beer. Dave was in his 40s, with the perpetually harried look of a man with twin 8-year-olds. "Peace offering," he said, handing me the beer. "Saw Karen in your yard yesterday." I invited him in, and we settled in my kitchen. "Let me guess," I said, opening 2 bottles. "You're here to convince me to repaint my fence." "God, no," Dave laughed. "I think it looks fine. But I should warn you, Karen's on the warpath. Last guy who crossed her ended up with weekly anonymous calls to the city about code violations. Every single week, for a year." I nearly choked on my beer. "Over a fence color? There's no HOA here, that's why I bought in this neighborhood." "Doesn't matter to Karen. Before you, it was the Johnsons' basketball hoop. And before that, it was the Patels' garden gnomes." Dave shook his head. "She's appointed herself the guardian of Oakwood Street's character. Has been ever since her husband died 5 years ago. He was on the city council, so she thinks that gives her some kind of authority by proxy." I showed Dave the letter I'd received. He whistled. "The committee. She only brings out the big guns when she's serious." "Who are the other 2 people?" "Margaret and Herbert. They're in their 80s and live at the end of the street. They sign whatever Karen puts in front of them. I'm not sure Herbert can even see anymore." As Dave finished his beer, I found myself staring at the boxes of electronics in the corner of my dining room, my yet-to-be-unpacked home automation hobby supplies. "Dave, what exactly does the unofficial approved color list include?" Basically earth tones, browns, tans, muted greens. Why?" "Because technically, I could just change the color, right? Nothing says how often I have to change it." I held up the LED strip I'd found the night before. Dave's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Max, what are you planning?" "I'm thinking my fence is about to become a lot more colorful." Dave looked concerned, but intrigued. "This isn't going to end well." "Oh, I don't know about that. I think it might be exactly what this neighborhood needs." After Dave left, I dove into research mode. LED technology had advanced significantly since my last home automation project 3 years ago. Higher resolution, better weather resistance, more sophisticated control systems. The possibilities were endless. I sketched out plans for mounting weatherproof LED strips along my entire fence perimeter. I'd need about 180 feet of high-density strips, weatherproof power connections, and a control system that could handle complex light patterns. The cost would be substantial, but not prohibitive, especially considering the entertainment value. I joined several maker forums and described my project, leaving out the petty revenge aspect. Within hours, I received a private message from a user named Lightwizard. "Hey, saw your fence project post? I'm an electrical engineer specializing in large-scale light installations, and I live in Millfield too. If you want some professional input, I'd be happy to consult. Zoe." I arranged a video call with Zoe Chen for the next day. She appeared on my screen with purple-streaked black hair, glasses, and an immediate understanding of what I was really up to. "So, let me get this straight," she said, barely containing her laughter after I explained the Karen situation. "Your neighbor complained about your blue fence, so you want to turn it into the world's largest mood ring?" "Essentially, yes, but with more programming and spite." "I'm in. This is exactly the kind of petty I live for." Zoe turned out to be exactly what the project needed. In her late 20s, she worked for a company that designed lighting for concerts and large-scale events, but she had a side business creating custom installations for local businesses and wealthy homeowners. "I actually did something similar for the Winter Light Festival last year," she explained, sending me photos of an impressive light display that transformed an ordinary building into a canvas of moving colors. "We can set this up to do way more than just change colors. We could do patterns, animations, even react to music or motion if you want to go completely over the top." "How over the top are we talking?" "Think Clark Griswold meets Times Square, but with better programming." Perfect. While I waited for components to arrive, Dave kept me updated on neighborhood gossip. Karen had been going door to door with a petition for aesthetic compliance, but was meeting resistance from newer residents. She told the Millers that their property value could drop 15% because of your fence, Dave reported, while helping me install discrete mounting brackets on the inside of my fence panels. Mrs. Miller asked for the data supporting that claim, and Karen just huffed about common knowledge. "You'd think she'd have better things to do with her time," I said, measuring the spacing for another bracket. "That's just it, she doesn't. Running this neighborhood is her full-time job. Unpaid, self-appointed, but she takes it more seriously than most CEOs. Over the next week, packages began arriving daily. I converted my garage into a workshop, testing LED strips and configuring the control system. To avoid arousing suspicion, I kept the fence's outward appearance unchanged and worked on the inner side that faced my yard. When Zoe arrived that weekend to help with the installation, she brought additional equipment from her professional inventory. "I had some extra weather-sealed controllers from a canceled project," she explained, unloading boxes from her car. "Much better than the consumer-grade stuff you ordered." We worked efficiently, installing the LED strips along the interior of the fence so they remained invisible during daylight hours. Dave joined us, bringing lunch and gradually becoming more enthusiastic about the project. "You know, my kids are going to lose their minds when they see this," he said as he helped mount a control box. "They've been afraid to play in the front yard since Karen yelled at them for being too loud." By Sunday evening, the physical installation was complete. RGB LED strips running the entire fence perimeter, weather-resistant control boxes at strategic points, a main control hub in my garage, and a custom software interface on my laptop. As dusk fell, we gathered in my backyard for the first test. I clicked a button on my laptop, and the fence came to life with a soft white glow that gradually shifted to a gentle blue, the same blue that had started this whole conflict. "It's beautiful," Zoe commented. "Almost elegant." "That's just the beginning," I grinned. "Wait until you see program number 2. With another click, the fence transformed into a rippling rainbow pattern, colors flowing smoothly around the perimeter in a mesmerizing display. Dave burst out laughing. "Oh my God, Karen is going to have an aneurysm." The initial test drew attention. Neighbors walking dogs or taking evening strolls stopped to watch. A few cars slowed as they passed my house. A woman across the street called out, "This is amazing! Are you going to do this every night?" "Still working out the details," I replied, pleased by the positive response. As we stood admiring our work, a white Lexus SUV drove slowly past. Karen didn't stop, but we could see her face transition from confusion to horror to outrage through the car window. "And showtime begins," Zoe murmured. 10 minutes later, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Mr. Reynolds," Karen's voice was tight with controlled fury. "Turn off those lights immediately. This is completely unacceptable." "Actually, Mrs. Winters, I've decided to comply with your color concerns. The fence will now display all approved colors, and a few extras. Have a good evening." I hung up before she could respond, and turned to my accomplices. "I give it less than 24 hours before she calls the cops." Dave checked his watch. "I say 12 hours tops." Zoe shook her head. "You're both wrong. My money's on less than an hour." 37 minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up in front of my house. Officer Rodriguez stepped out, looking tired and slightly annoyed. He was in his late 30s with a no-nonsense demeanor that suggested he'd seen everything the suburbs could throw at him. "Evening, folks. Got a complaint about a light disturbance." I stepped forward. "Good evening, officer. I'm Max Reynolds. This is my property." "Mr. Reynolds, I've received a complaint about excessive and disruptive lighting coming from your property. Mind if I take a look?" "Not at all." Zoe had quickly switched the display to a more subtle program when we saw the police car approaching. Now the fence was displaying a gentle blue-to-green gradient that slowly pulsed, deliberately toned down from the rainbow pattern. The officer walked around, studying the fence with a neutral expression. After a complete circuit, he returned to where we were waiting. "This doesn't seem excessive to me," Officer Rodriguez finally said. "No brighter than standard landscape lighting." "That was my assessment as well," I replied. "I've researched the municipal codes on light pollution, and I'm well within the guidelines." The officer seemed impressed by my preparation. "You've done your homework. Mind if I ask what prompted this installation?" I explained the fence color situation while Dave and Zoe tried to suppress their grins. Officer Rodriguez's lips twitched slightly. "I see. And the lights are only on the inside of the fence? Not directly visible from the street?" "Correct. Just the glow is visible, which falls under decorative lighting regulations." The officer nodded. "Well, Mr. Reynolds, I don't see any violation here. I'll inform the complainant that everything appears to be in order." As he turned to leave, he paused. "Just out of curiosity, what else can this system do?" I smiled. "Would you like a demonstration?" Officer Rodriguez checked that his cruiser blocked the view from Karen's house, then nodded. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. The fence erupted into a spectacular wave of color transitions that would put an EDM concert to shame. The officer actually chuckled. "Impressive. Just keep it reasonable after 10 p.m., all right? And maybe don't use that particular program too often." "Understood, officer." After he left, the three of us shared a triumphant look. "Round one to us," Dave said. Over the next 2 weeks, an escalating battle of wills unfolded between Karen and me. 3 days after Officer Rodriguez's visit, Karen filed a formal complaint with the city about inappropriate use of lighting in a residential area. The city sent an inspector who, after reviewing the installation and applicable codes, found no violations. As long as I adhered to the 10 p.m. noise and light ordinance. Undeterred, Karen organized an emergency neighborhood meeting to discuss recent aesthetic disruptions. Only half the neighbors attended, and many actually expressed support for my creative display. The meeting ended with Karen angrily declaring she'd take the issue to the city council. I responded by programming a new display that spelled out "Hello Neighbors" in scrolling text. Children from around the neighborhood began gathering each evening to watch the light show. I started taking requests for color themes. "Can you do a purple and gold display for my daughter's birthday?" asked Mrs. Chen from 2 streets over. "It's her school colors." "The Millers are celebrating their 25th anniversary," Dave informed me. "Silver and white would be awesome." What had started as petty revenge was becoming something unexpected, a community gathering point. Karen escalated her tactics, placing flyers on windshields claiming that my lights were causing health issues and could potentially trigger seizures. I responded by consulting with Zoe about safe flash rates, adding a disclaimer to my light show, and actually toning down any rapid transitions to ensure they were safely below any threshold that could cause issues. Then I discovered that Karen had set up a camera pointed at my yard. A quick consultation with a lawyer friend confirmed this could be a privacy issue. Officer Rodriguez paid Karen a visit about proper surveillance etiquette. The situation took an unexpected turn when Karen's nephew Tyler, a 16-year-old who had been watching the light shows with his friends, secretly approached me one evening. "Hey, Mr. Reynolds," he said nervously, looking over his shoulder as if expecting his aunt to appear at any moment. I had some ideas for your light show." Tyler, it turned out, was a budding DJ who had been experimenting with syncing lights to music. He showed me some videos on his phone of his bedroom setup. "My aunt would kill me if she knew I was here," he admitted, "but this is the coolest thing to ever happen in this boring neighborhood." I invited him in, and we spent the evening creating a music-synchronized light show that attracted even more attention when we debuted it the following night. Karen's response was to escalate to the city council, submitting a formal petition demanding new regulations on excessive decorative lighting. Councilmember Patricia Hammond scheduled a site visit to assess the situation firsthand. Throughout this period, I continued to refine my light displays. What started as petty revenge had evolved into a genuine creative outlet. I created themed shows for different occasions, set up a simple website where neighbors could vote on the night's theme, and even began documenting the technical aspects of the project for my professional portfolio. The situation also began changing me. I had moved to this neighborhood seeking isolation after my divorce, planning to focus on work and avoid complicated relationships. Instead, I was now hosting informal gatherings in my yard, meeting neighbors, and reconnecting with my creative side. Zoe became a regular visitor, our professional collaboration gradually shifting toward something more personal. We discovered shared interests beyond lighting technology, a love of obscure sci-fi shows, hiking, and experimental cooking. "You know," she said one evening as we worked on a new animation sequence, "this was supposed to be a consulting gig, but I think I've spent more unpaid hours on your fence than on my actual job this month." "I could pay you," I offered, suddenly feeling guilty. "Nah, this is too much fun to be work." She nudged my shoulder with hers. "Besides, watching Karen's face when we debuted the Falling Stars sequence was payment enough." Meanwhile, Karen became increasingly isolated as her crusade against the lights failed to gain traction. Even her usual supporters began to distance themselves as they saw the positive community impact of the evening light displays. The conflict reached its peak when Karen confronted Tyler after discovering his involvement. "You're betraying your family by helping that light polluter," her voice carried across the street as they argued in their front yard. "Aunt Karen, it's just lights. People are enjoying them. Why is that so wrong?" Tyler responded. "This neighborhood has standards. Your uncle helped establish those standards. Maybe the standards could use some updating. Not everything needs to be beige." This exchange, overheard by several neighbors, began shifting public opinion even further against Karen's campaign. Just as I was hitting my stride with the light show, an unexpected visitor arrived. My ex-wife, Susan. She called from the end of my driveway on a Wednesday evening, having just pulled up in her immaculately maintained Audi. "So this is what a midlife crisis looks like," she said, eyeing the fence, which was currently displaying a gentle ocean wave pattern in blues and greens. "I'm 35, I pointed out. "Too young for a midlife crisis. This is just a regular crisis." Susan laughed, the familiar sound bringing a complicated mix of emotions. We'd been divorced for just over a year, a surprisingly amicable split after we'd realized we wanted fundamentally different futures. She'd wanted to climb the corporate ladder and eventually move to Chicago. I'd wanted to stay put and maybe start a family. No dramatic betrayals, just the slow recognition that we were heading in different directions. "I was in town for a conference," she explained, as we sat on my porch, watching the light display. "I heard about your electric fence from Martin." Martin was a mutual friend who had apparently been keeping her updated on my life. "I was worried you were having some kind of post-divorce meltdown," she continued, "but this is actually pretty impressive." "So this whole thing started because some neighbor complained about the color blue?" Susan asked after I'd explained the situation. "Basically. It spiraled from there." Susan studied the installation with professional interest. She worked in event planning for a major hotel chain. You know, this could be marketable. Temporary installations for events, custom light shows for private parties. I hadn't considered the commercial potential. You think so? Absolutely. My company is always looking for unique visual elements. We're doing a corporate gala next month with a future tech theme. Something like this would be perfect. As we discussed possibilities, Karen appeared at the edge of my property. She was carrying her ever-present notebook and wearing an expression of grim determination. Mr. Reynolds, I want you to know that Councilmember Hammond will be here tomorrow evening. She'll see exactly how disruptive this spectacle has become. I introduced Susan. Mrs. Winters, this is Susan Reynolds. Your wife? Karen asked, momentarily thrown off balance. Ex-wife, we said simultaneously. I'm in town for the Regional Event Planning Conference, Susan added. I was just telling Max what a remarkable installation he's created. My colleagues would be very interested in this technology for upscale events. The professional validation clearly unsettled Karen, who had been painting me as an unstable troublemaker. She retreated without her usual threats. After she left, I considered this new wrinkle. You know, I never thought about turning this into an actual business opportunity. You should. It's creative, technically impressive, and clearly draws attention. That night I stayed up late sketching ideas for commercial applications of my system, energized by the new possibilities. The next morning, I filed a business registration for Reynolds Reactive Lighting and began creating a professional portfolio. Meanwhile, Karen had been busy making calls to particular city officials about outdated ordinances and potential code violations. Councilmember Patricia Hammond's visit was scheduled for 8 p.m., when the light show would be in full effect. I prepared a special program for the occasion, a tasteful display that showcased the technical capabilities without being ostentatious. Karen arrived early with a thick binder labeled Neighborhood Preservation Documentation. She'd brought reinforcements. 2 older residents from the other end of the street who nodded solemnly at everything she said. A small crowd of neighbors gathered, including Dave and his family, Zoe, Tyler, who positioned himself far from his aunt, and to my surprise, Susan, who decided to extend her stay to see how the situation played out. Councilmember Hammond arrived exactly on time. She was in her early 50s, professionally dressed, with the patient expression of someone who's mediated countless neighborhood disputes. "Thank you all for accommodating this visit," she began. "I'm here to observe and listen to concerns from all sides." Karen jumped in immediately, opening her binder to color-coded tabs. "Councilmember Hammond, I've documented numerous instances of excessive light emission, improper fixture installation, and potential electrical code violations." She flipped to a page with photographs. As you can see, the lumens exceed what's reasonable for residential areas, creating a carnival-like atmosphere in our quiet community. I presented my own documentation, permits, electrical certifications, light level measurements, and testimonials from neighbors. The system was professionally installed, adheres to all relevant codes, and operates within noise and light ordinances, I explained. I also maintain a strict 10 p.m. curfew for any dynamic displays. Hammond listened to both sides, then asked to see the light show in operation. I activated the system, starting with subtle effects and gradually demonstrating more complex capabilities. The gathered neighbors spontaneously applauded after particularly beautiful sequences. Even Hammond looked impressed. "I have to say, Mr. Reynolds, this is quite sophisticated. Have you considered participating in our Summer Arts Festival? We're expanding the light installation section this year." Karen interjected before I could answer. "Councilmember Hammond, this is precisely the problem. Our quiet residential neighborhood is being turned into some kind of light carnival. Property values will suffer." Hammond turned to Karen. Do you have any evidence of that claim, Mrs. Winters? Because my experience suggests unique community features often increase property interest, not decrease it. Karen flipped frantically through her binder, but couldn't produce relevant data. Sensing the shifting momentum, Susan stepped forward and introduced herself, explaining how similar installations had actually enhanced property profiles in other areas. In fact, the Tourism Board in Portland features neighborhood light displays in their winter promotional materials. Other neighbors began sharing positive experiences. My kids can't wait for the evening themes. We've met more neighbors in the past month than in the 5 years we've lived here. I've had friends drive from across town to see it. Hammond nodded thoughtfully, then addressed the group. I see two things here. A creative installation that seems to have created a positive community gathering point, and concerns about precedent and neighborhood character. She turned to me. Would you be willing to establish some regular hours, and perhaps a schedule of themes to help neighbors know what to expect? Absolutely, I agreed immediately. And Mrs. Winters, would that address some of your concerns about predictability and community standards? Karen realized she'd lost the support of the council member. I suppose it would be a start. Hammond smiled diplomatically. Excellent. I'll make a note in my report that a neighborhood compromise is being developed. And Mr. Reynolds, please do contact our Arts Commission about the summer festival. As Hammond left, the neighbors broke into small discussion groups, the mood surprisingly positive. Karen stood alone, her binder clutched to her chest, looking somewhat lost as her campaign dissolved around her. The week after Councilmember Hammond's visit brought surprising developments. I implemented the suggested schedule, creating a website where neighbors could view the theme calendar and even suggest special occasions to commemorate. I was in my workshop refining a new program when there was a knock at my door. To my shock, it was Karen, looking uncomfortable but determined. Mr. Reynolds, may I speak with you? I invited her in, curious about this unexpected visit. Karen took a deep breath. I've been thinking about Councilmember Hammond's suggestions. While I still believe our neighborhood should maintain certain standards, I realize that perhaps those standards can evolve. This was not what I expected. I appreciate that, Mrs. Winters. My late husband was actually quite interested in technology, she continued. He would have probably been fascinated by your system, though he never would have admitted it publicly. She placed a folder on the table. I've drafted a proposal for what I'm calling Neighborhood Enhancement Guidelines. Rather than restrictive rules, it offers suggestions for how unique features can be implemented tastefully. I reviewed the document, surprised by its reasonable tone. This is actually very thoughtful. I spoke with your ex-wife before she left town. She mentioned the commercial potential of your light technology and suggested it could put our neighborhood on the map in a positive way. The conversation shifted into unexpected territory as Karen revealed she was concerned about maintaining her influence in the changing neighborhood. Her crusade against my fence was partly about resisting change that threatened to make her role as standards keeper obsolete. The neighborhood is changing, she admitted. I can either change with it or become irrelevant. By the end of our conversation, a tentative plan emerged. Karen would help organize a neighborhood light festival, leveraging her extensive community connections, while I provided the technical expertise. Her attention to detail and organizational skills complemented my creative and technical abilities. You understand this doesn't mean I approve of all your color choices, she clarified as she left. That shade of blue is still problematic. I laughed. The fence can be any color you want, and every color you don't. Dave was flabbergasted when I told him about Karen's visit. Karen Winters is helping you expand the light show? Did she get body snatched? Let's just say she decided it was better to be part of the change than fight it. In the months that followed, My light fence installation evolved from neighborhood curiosity to local attraction to business opportunity. With input from Susan, who continued to consult remotely, and technical assistance from Zoe, who had become more than just a colleague, I developed a portable version of my system for events. Reynolds Reactive Lighting booked its first commercial installation for a corporate event, followed quickly by a wedding reception. Tyler, Karen's nephew, became my first employee, managing the programming for theme nights while I handled the business development. The fence that started it all remained the testing ground for new effects and sequences. The scheduled shows became a neighborhood institution, with themed nights for holidays, birthdays, and community events. My home office workshop expanded to a small commercial space in town where Zoe and I could develop larger installations. Our personal relationship developed alongside the business, our shared passion for creative technology, creating a strong foundation. Karen, true to her word, helped organize the first annual Oakwood Illumination Celebration, which drew visitors from surrounding communities. Her meticulous planning and my technical wizardry made it a successful event that the city asked to expand the following year. The municipal code that Karen once tried to use against me got updated, with Karen herself serving on the Citizen Advisory Committee. The new code included provisions for innovative residential displays with reasonable guidelines rather than restrictions. Dave, watching the transformation of both the neighborhood and his friend, commented, "You know, 6 months ago you were a recently divorced guy who barely left his house except to build a fence. Now you've got a business, a girlfriend, and you've somehow turned Karen Winters into an ally, all because you painted your fence blue." Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, I reflected, watching as the evening's light show began its gentle startup sequence. It's getting creative. 1 year after the initial confrontation about my fence color, I hosted a neighborhood gathering to unveil my most ambitious light show yet. The event coincided with the official launch of my company's new product line of consumer-level programmable lighting systems. The fence that started it all now served as both a showcase for my technology and a symbol of how creativity can transform conflict into opportunity. Karen arrived early to help with the setup, having fully embraced her role as community coordinator for special events. She still insisted on proper procedures and documentation, but her energy had been redirected toward building rather than restricting. "The press release went out this morning," she informed me, consulting her tablet. She'd upgraded from the notebook. "We've already received responses from 3 local news outlets and the regional lifestyle magazine." "Thanks, Karen. I couldn't have done this without you." And strangely enough, I meant it. "Of course you couldn't," she replied, with a hint of her old superiority, but now accompanied by a knowing smile. "Someone needs to maintain standards, even for revolutionary technology." As neighbors gathered on my lawn, I took a moment to appreciate how much had changed. My post-divorce isolation had been replaced by genuine community connection. My technical hobby had evolved into a thriving business, and my fence, the simple blue fence that caused so much controversy, had become a canvas for expression that brought people together. Zoe slipped her hand into mine. "Ready for the big reveal?" "As ready as I'll ever be." When the show began, synchronized to music and more spectacular than anything I'd programmed before, I stood between Zoe and Karen, watching the faces of the gathered crowd light up with wonder. Sometimes the best response to someone trying to dim your colors is to shine even brighter. And sometimes a blue fence is just the beginning of a much more colorful story. All hell broke loose. The entire street erupted into a synchronized explosion of lights. Every house, every tree, every mailbox and shrub flashed in perfect rhythm to Mariah Carey's All I want for Christmas is you. The sidewalks lit up. The inflatable Santas started dancing. The rooftop reindeer bobbed their heads to the beat. And my personal favorite addition, the massive neon sign I had placed directly in front of Karen's house, flashing in all caps. Merry Christmas from your favorite neighborhood light show. I should have known this Christmas was going to come with extra holiday misery the second I saw Karen stomping across my lawn, clipboard clutched in her claws, wearing her usual expression of disapproval mixed with self-importance. She stopped at the edge of my property, nostrils flaring like a bull ready to charge. Behind her, my glorious holiday display twinkled in all its synchronized, music-playing, candy cane-colored glory. I took a sip of my hot cocoa, utterly unbothered. Morning, Karen, you look festive. She did not, in fact, look festive. She looked like the living embodiment of a tax audit. There's a problem with your decorations, she said, flipping open her clipboard like she was about to deliver a Supreme Court ruling. I raised an eyebrow. Is the problem that they bring joy to children and families during the holiday season? Her eye twitched. The problem is that they're excessively bright and disruptive to the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood. Aesthetic integrity? I repeated, pretending to ponder this. Karen, it's Christmas. There's literally a 12-foot inflatable Santa in Greg's yard, and I don't see you over there trying to regulate his integrity. That's different, she snapped. Your house is too much. Now that was a compliment. She held out a formal notice, waving it in my face. You need to tone it down immediately. I took the paper and skimmed it. A demand to dim my lights, limit the display hours, reduce the visual disruption? I let out a full, hearty laugh, the kind that comes straight from the belly. Oh, Karen, you almost got me. For a second, I thought you were serious. Her face remained stone cold. Oh, she was serious. Wait, I said, my smile dropping. You actually think you can police my holiday cheer? This is an official HOA mandate, she said, straightening her back like she was some kind of dictator of suburbia. Failure to comply will result in fines. Now at this point, I should have seen the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. But I made a critical mistake. I underestimated just how much of a Grinch Karen could be. So I ignored her warning. For the next few nights, I let my decorations shine in all their dazzling, synchronized, over-the-top Christmas glory. And then, exactly 3 days later, I woke up to a bright red violation notice taped to my front door. Notice of fines for noncompliance. Subject: excessive brightness violation. Dear homeowner, your property remains in violation of HOA guidelines regarding excessive holiday lighting. As of today, a fine of $100 per day will be issued until the display is removed or modified to fit within appropriate levels. Failure to comply will result in further penalties. Sincerely, Karen McDictator, HOA President. I stared at the letter, my blood boiling as I read and reread it. $100 a day? For lights? I clenched the notice in my fist, my entire soul rejecting the injustice. This wasn't about Christmas decorations. This was about Karen flexing her HOA muscles and trying to control me. And if she thought I was going to just roll over and let her steal my Christmas spirit, she had no idea what was coming. I stood in my driveway, holding Karen's ridiculous, excessive brightness violation notice, like it was a bad Christmas gift I couldn't return. The nerve of this woman. Fining me. For Christmas lights? My perfectly normal, not at all excessive synchronized holiday display? Okay, fine. Maybe it was a little excessive. Maybe my house could be seen from space. Maybe the synchronized flashing lights had caused a minor traffic jam last year when a group of parents pulled over so their kids could watch. But did that warrant a fine? Absolutely not. Karen had finally overplayed her hand. I took a slow sip of my coffee, staring up at my house, the twinkling bulbs reflecting in my window. My holiday cheer had been personally attacked, and if there was one thing I knew for certain, it was that I was not going to let Karen win. She wanted my display toned down? Oh, sweetheart, I was about to turn it up to 11. I started by doubling my original light count. A normal person would have taken this opportunity to scale back, maybe compromise a little. But I wasn't a normal person. I was a man with a grudge and an unlimited holiday budget. So I drove straight to the biggest holiday warehouse in the city and loaded up my cart like a Christmas-crazed maniac. 2 hours later, my trunk was overflowing with industrial-strength Christmas cheer. I had boxes of twinkling LEDs, color-changing strobes, and an assortment of inflatable holiday icons that ranged from classic Santa to a reindeer so large it needed to be staked down with steel rods. The cashier raised an eyebrow as she rang up my purchases. "Sir, are you decorating a house or launching a full-scale holiday invasion?" I grinned. "A little of both." She gave me a slow nod of approval. "Go get 'em." Back home, I realized this was bigger than just me. Karen had been terrorizing the neighborhood for years, writing up petty fines for things like mailboxes that weren't uniform, holiday wreaths that were too large, and Greg's inflatable Santa, which she had personally deflated last year. It was time to strike back. So under the guise of friendly holiday cheer, I went door to door, gathering an army of festive rebels. Mike, my next-door neighbor, signed on immediately. He was still bitter about Karen banning his Halloween fog machine. Mrs. Patterson down the street grinned and said she'd been waiting for a reason to unleash her penguin-shaped Christmas lights. Even Greg, who still held a grudge about inflatable Santagate, was all in. By the end of the night, Operation Blinding Christmas had officially been launched. The next evening, the neighborhood underwent a transformation. We didn't just decorate. We went nuclear. It started with my house. I strung up so many lights that I swear I could hear my electric meter screaming. My brand new rooftop Santa sleigh flashed in time with the music, and my latest purchase, a towering LED reindeer with a blinking red nose that could probably be seen from orbit, stood proudly on my lawn. Mike covered his entire house in flashing red and green strobes, turning it into a Vegas casino of Christmas cheer. Mrs. Patterson lined her roof with illuminated candy canes, and Greg went completely feral. He installed a 30-foot inflatable Santa, complete with a sound system that blared Jingle Bell Rock on a loop every 30 minutes. By the time we finished, the entire street looked like a Christmas carnival on steroids. And Karen? Karen stood on her porch, absolutely horrified. Her arms were crossed so tight, I thought she might implode. The fact that her house was the only one left in darkness just made it even better. As cars began slowing down to admire the spectacle, I could feel the rage radiating off her. I raised my cocoa in a silent toast, grinning. This was only the beginning. The moment I flipped the switch and watched my house explode into a spectacle of synchronized holiday chaos, I knew I had created a monster. A beautiful, blinding, power-sucking monster. But I wasn't stopping there. No, Karen declared war on Christmas, and I intended to win in the most obnoxious way possible. So I did what any rational, holiday-loving, HOA-hating homeowner would do. I hired a professional electrician. Mike, the electrician, arrived the next morning, standing in my driveway with a coffee in one hand and an expression that said he had no idea what he was signing up for. "So," he said, rubbing his chin as he took in the sheer level of madness already in progress, "you're telling me you want to synchronize every house on the block to a single music display?" I nodded. With perfect timing, Mike let out a low whistle. "Man, I don't even know if the Vegas Strip pulls off something this ridiculous." I clapped him on the shoulder. "Then let's make history." It took 2 full days, several miles of extension cords, and enough power to short-circuit a small country. But by the end of it, every single house on the street was wired into one glorious, synchronized light show. And when I say every house, I mean every single one. Well, except Karen's. She had refused to participate, obviously. But that was fine, because I had a plan for her house too. The night of the grand unveiling, we gathered in the street, anticipation buzzing in the air. Cars lined up at the entrance to our neighborhood, people clutching cups of hot cocoa, kids sitting on their parents' shoulders, eager to witness the madness. The HOA's worst nightmare was about to begin. I stood front and center, remote in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, my voice full of holiday vengeance, "I present to you The Blinding Christmas Spectacular. I pressed the button, and then all hell broke loose. The entire street erupted into a synchronized explosion of lights. Every house, every tree, every mailbox and shrub flashed in perfect rhythm to Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You. The sidewalks lit up, the inflatable Santas started dancing, the rooftop reindeer bobbed their heads to the beat, and my personal favorite addition? The massive neon sign I had placed directly in front of Karen's house, flashing in all caps. "Merry Christmas from your favorite neighborhood light show," Karen screamed. Not a polite gasp, not an irritated huff. A full-blown horror movie, banshee-level shriek from her dark, undecorated porch. The neighbors burst into cheers. Kids danced in the street. Someone in the crowd shouted, "I think I can feel my retinas burning." It was perfect. Then, just when I thought it couldn't get any better, the local news van rolled up. A reporter stepped out, microphone in hand, and gestured toward the spectacle behind her. "We're here at what is now being dubbed the most insane holiday display in the city." The camera panned across the flashing madness, capturing everything. The synchronized light show, the 30-foot inflatable Santa, the neon sign directly in front of Karen's house flashing like a casino billboard. Karen, still mid-meltdown, turned and ran inside like a vampire retreating from the sun. I smiled. It was shaping up to be the best Christmas ever. The morning after, the Blinding Christmas Spectacular trademark premiered. I awoke to the sound of pure, unfiltered HOA rage. Karen was already outside, flailing her arms at a group of HOA board members like a general rallying her troops before battle. I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, watching as she waved a ridiculous stack of violation notices like they were sacred scrolls. From the way she was barking orders, you'd think I had erected a theme park instead of an extremely festive holiday display. I took a slow sip of my coffee. This was going to be fun. The first attack came in the form of legal nonsense. Karen and her band of rule-loving minions combed through every HOA guideline in existence, desperately trying to find something, anything to use against me. "You've exceeded the neighborhood's acceptable decorative display sizes limit." Except there was no such rule. "Your use of synchronized lights is disruptive to the uniformity of the neighborhood." Ah, yes, the crime of not being boring enough. "You're causing light pollution." Oh, this one was my favorite. Karen, in an absolute frenzy, called the city to report my display for excessive light pollution. A city official actually showed up, clipboard in hand, probably expecting to find some illegal Vegas Strip situation. Instead, he found a perfectly legal, neighborhood-wide synchronized holiday display, 0 zoning violations, a homeowner who had already checked every city code beforehand just to be safe. I met the inspector at the curb with a knowing smile. "Morning," I said cheerfully. "Here for the Christmas light inspection?" He sighed. "Yeah, I got a call about excessive brightness endangering public safety." I gestured around. "Just good old-fashioned holiday cheer." The man blinked at the absurdity of it all, glanced down at his paperwork, and shook his head. "Yeah, there's nothing illegal here," he muttered, clearly questioning all of his life choices that led to inspecting Christmas lights for a living. Karen, who had been hovering nearby like a vulture, screeched in protest. But it's blinding! It's unnatural!" The inspector sighed, rubbing his temples. "Ma'am, it's Christmas." She gasped like he had personally betrayed her. When that failed, Karen tried the noise complaint angle. Now, to be fair, my light show was synchronized to music. And it was loud. Jingle Bell Rock at max volume every 15 minutes probably wasn't winning me any awards with the insomniacs on the block. So Karen marched right back to the HOA office and filed an official complaint for unreasonable noise levels. I received another notice, demanding that I shut down the music portion of the display immediately. I smiled. Oh, I'd shut it down, all right. That night, I flipped the switch, and the entire light show went completely silent. The lights still flashed in perfect synchronization. Every rooftop Santa still bobbed along to an invisible beat. and the giant neon sign in front of Karen's house still blazed in glorious defiance. But now Karen had to suffer through the full, blinding horror without even the sweet distraction of holiday music. Now she had nothing but the soul-crushing silence and the knowledge that she had lost. At around 9 p.m., I caught a glimpse of Karen standing on her porch, gripping her coffee mug with the force of a woman on the edge. I gave her a little wave. She stomped back inside. I sipped my cocoa, satisfied. Merry Christmas, Karen. At this point, Karen was hanging on by a thread. The HOA had thrown every rule in their little handbook at me. Light pollution, noise violations, visual disruption, whatever that meant. And yet, nothing stuck. But I knew Karen. She wasn't just going to give up. She was waiting, lurking like a holiday-hating gremlin, hoping I'd slip up so she could swoop in and shut down my beautiful, blinding Christmas chaos. Which is why I decided to make my next move untouchable. I wasn't just going to win this war. I was going to make it so they could never fight me again. It all started when a local holiday decoration company reached out. Apparently, thanks to all the social media attention and the fact that the local news had now done 2 separate segments on my street, my display had officially gone viral. The company, a high-end Christmas light manufacturer, sent me an email with a simple question. Would you be interested in a sponsorship? I had to read it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. A sponsorship. For Christmas lights. I immediately called the number in the email. A very enthusiastic marketing rep named Lisa answered and wasted no time getting to the point. "We love what you're doing," she gushed. "We think it's the perfect embodiment of holiday spirit." I smiled, already imagining Karen's head exploding. "That's great to hear. We'd love to donate some of our premium light sets to you, and in return maybe we could call it the Newman Lights Holiday Light Show?" I nearly laughed out loud. This was perfect. Lisa continued, completely unaware that she had just handed me the single most powerful weapon against the HOA. "We were also thinking, if you'd be open to it, we could work with the city to turn it into an official event." I nearly dropped my phone. An official event. If my house and my street became a city-sponsored holiday attraction, then the HOA would have zero authority to interfere. Karen and her army of clipboard-wielding minions would never be able to shut me down. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Lisa, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful partnership." 2 days later, the sponsorship was finalized. The company sent an entire crew to upgrade my setup, installing state-of-the-art LED displays, programmable sequences, and a literal freaking light tunnel leading up to my driveway. And then, the cherry on top. The mayor's office got involved. Apparently, the media attention had caught the city's interest, and someone in local government decided it would be great PR to make this an official event. So, on a bright Saturday afternoon, the actual mayor of our city showed up in my driveway, shook my hand, and declared my light show an official community enrichment event. Which meant the HOA no longer had any legal authority over it. They couldn't fine me. They couldn't demand I shut it down. They couldn't do a single thing about it. And the best part? Karen had to stand there and smile as the mayor posed for pictures with me right in front of my glowing, synchronized, HOA-defying masterpiece. I'm not sure what was brighter that night, my lights, or the absolute, seething rage radiating off Karen's face. Either way, it was the best Christmas gift I had ever received. Karen was cornered. For weeks, she had tried everything to shut down my Christmas light display. She had thrown the HOA rulebook at me, filed bogus complaints with the city, and had probably spent sleepless nights clutching her clipboard, brainstorming ways to ruin my holiday cheer. And yet, here we were. My street was now a city-sponsored holiday event. The mayor had literally taken a selfie in front of my house. The news kept running clips of the most insane Christmas display in town. Karen had officially lost the battle. But did she give up? Of course not. Instead, she summoned the HOA board for an emergency meeting. Because when all else fails, change the rules. The meeting was packed, word had spread fast, and half the neighborhood had shown up, ready for blood. Karen sat at the head of the table, posture rigid, her usual tight-lipped, smug expression now just barely holding together. The other board members looked less confident, probably because they had realized this was going to be a public execution. Karen cleared her throat and dramatically adjusted her reading glasses, like she was about to unveil a critical piece of legislature instead of spewing nonsense about Christmas lights. "This meeting has been called," she announced, "to address an escalating problem in our community, the unchecked excessive use of holiday decorations." A wave of incredulous muttering swept through the room. Someone actually booed. Karen ignored it, plowing ahead. "Given the situation," she said through gritted teeth, "I am proposing an amendment to our HOA guidelines, which will limit the amount of exterior holiday lighting per household to ensure a more uniform, tasteful neighborhood aesthetic." I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, waiting for my moment. "This is absurd!" Greg, my neighbor, shot to his feet. "You didn't care about decorations last year. Why is it suddenly an issue?" Karen straightened her papers, ignoring him. "This is simply about maintaining order." Oh, that was it. That was my cue. I slowly stood up, clearing my throat. "So," I said, letting my voice drip with sarcasm, "just so I'm clear, the 10-foot fountain at the neighborhood entrance, the one with the angel peeing into a bowl, that's fine?" Karen froze. The room erupted into laughter. "That's an art piece," she snapped. "Oh, so public urination sculptures are fine, but my Christmas lights are a problem?" More laughter. Karen's eye twitched. I gestured toward the board. "How about the house with 20 inflatable flamingos in the summer?" A guy in the back nodded. "That's my house." "Are we banning flamingos?" I asked, feigning concern. Karen opened her mouth, realized she had absolutely no defense, then snapped it shut again. That's when it happened. One of the board members, Frank, sighed loudly and put his face in his hands. "Karen, just let it go," he muttered. A wave of nods and murmured agreements spread through the room. And then, the final nail in Karen's coffin, someone called for a vote. "All in favor of rejecting this ridiculous rule change?" Every single hand shot up. Every single one. Even a few HOA board members looked embarrassed as they voted against Karen's nonsense. Karen sat there, staring at the sea of hands, her entire world crumbling. And just like that, she had lost. With no way to fight back, Karen had no choice but to suffer as my glorious, city-sanctioned, HOA-proof Christmas display bathed her house in its blinding, synchronized glow. Her dark, undecorated home stuck out like a miserable lump of coal amidst the explosion of color, music, and flashing lights surrounding her. I'd catch glimpses of her peeking out through her blinds, her face permanently locked in an expression of despair. The final insult? She moved out a month later. She was gone by New Year's. Poof. Vanished. It was the greatest Christmas miracle of all. And of course, I celebrated in the only way that made sense. The next year, I doubled the lights. I made sure that Karen's old house, now owned by a lovely family who loved Christmas, was covered in decorations. I added a second neon sign. It read, "Dedicated to the memory of Karen's HOA rules, R.I.P." And as I stood in my driveway, watching the lights dance to Jingle Bell Rock in glorious synchronization, I took a deep breath of the crisp winter air, raised my hot cocoa, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, Karen."